The conflict between Abby and Devon did not erupt immediately, it accumulated over long. Tense silences where unspoken words gradually became heavier than accusations themselves. The issue surrounding Mariah initially began as a simple disagreement in perspective, but over time, it was no longer about right or wrong. It became a space where the deepest differences in how they loved, protected, and trusted one another were exposed. Abby believed Mariah was in a vulnerable state, needing compassion and time to heal. For her, humanity and patience were always the foundation for resolving any crisis. Devon, however, viewed everything through a completely different lens. He no longer had patience for hesitation and no longer believed emotions could justify delaying necessary decisions. In him, concern for potential consequences had transformed into increasingly rigid determination. The distance between them was not just a difference in opinion, but a clash between two ways of existing. Abby represented softness and the belief that people could be saved through understanding. Devon represented harsh reality, where every decision had to be based on logic and risk control. And it was this opposition that began to erode a relationship once built on trust and partnership. Tension escalated as discussions no longer maintained their initial calmness. Words meant as suggestions gradually turned into accusations. Devon began to feel that Abby was avoiding reality, refusing to face clear risks. Meanwhile, Abby felt Devon becoming distant, consumed by cold rationality to the point of losing his empathy. Mariah became the invisible center of all these conflicts. Even without direct presence in every argument, her situation and existence became a symbol of the disagreement between Abby and Devon. Each of them saw Mariah differently, and that difference prevented them from finding common ground. The turning point came when a seemingly ordinary discussion about how to handle Mariah's situation suddenly spiraled out of control. Emotions that had been suppressed for so long erupted at once. Devon could no longer maintain his composure, allowing frustration to turn into direct accusations, claiming Abby was too weak, unrealistic, and placing personal emotions above critical decisions. Those words struck Abby like a direct blow to her trust. She no longer saw Devon as a partner sharing her burden, but as someone growing unfamiliar, someone being consumed by cold rigidity. In a strong reaction, Abby pushed back just as fiercely, accusing Devon of losing himself, becoming ruthless, and no longer recognizing human value in his decisions. With no boundary left between argument and personal pain, the exchange turned into a purely emotional confrontation. Every word carried long-suppressed anger, every look revealed undeniable disappointment. The atmosphere between them became suffocating, leaving no space for understanding. The climax occurred when emotions completely overflowed, leading to a physical struggle born not from hatred, but from the collapse of internal control under relentless pressure. The moment was brief, but it was enough to completely shatter the final sense of safety between two people who once believed they could overcome anything together. Afterward, silence filled the space between Abby and Devon. No words could bridge the gap that had formed. They stood in heavy quiet, facing a truth that could no longer be denied. Their relationship was no longer simply being tested, it had reached the edge of collapse. Inside each of them, anger slowly gave way to uncertainty. Devon began to realize his rigidity may have pushed things too far, yet he could not take back what had been said. Abby, though deeply hurt, was no longer certain that her patience alone could save a relationship already cracking from within. The issue was no longer about Mariah. She had merely been the catalyst exposing differences they had long tried to ignore. Previous conflicts had not disappeared, they had only been compressed, now erupting all at once. As they separated in silence, the sense of loss did not arrive immediately but slowly seeped into every thought. Neither wanted to admit that what had just happened might be a point of no return. Yet deep down, both Abby and Devon understood they were standing at a crossroads with no easy choice left. Once again, Genoa City witnessed a seemingly stable relationship beginning to fracture from within, not because of external enemies, but because of irreconcilable differences between two people who once believed love could overcome everything. After that moment of collapse, Abby and Devon did not immediately drift apart, but simply being in the same space became the most unbearable thing. There were no more explanations, no rushed attempts to repair what had been broken. Only heavy silence remained, as if each of them were standing before their own mistakes without knowing where to begin facing them. Devon fell into an extreme state of self-control. He no longer exploded as before, but his silence brought no sense of peace. It was cold, rigid, and distant. In his mind, he kept questioning whether his harshness was truly necessary or just another form of losing control. He hated the feeling of pushing Abby away, yet he could not deny that he believed he was protecting something more important than temporary emotions. Abby, on the other hand, could not turn away from her sense of hurt, yet she also could not fully transform it into pure anger. Within her existed a silent inner conflict. Part of her wanted to believe Devon was simply being pushed to his limits by pressure, while another part could not forget the look in his eyes and the words that had crossed every boundary. She began to realize that love alone was not enough to cover the growing differences between them. Neither of them spoke about what would come next. That uncertainty itself became the most dangerous element. It did not allow them to end things, but it also did not allow them to begin again. Their relationship was suspended in an undefined state, where every choice carried loss. Outside, people around them began to notice the change. Without any confirmation or direct explanation, the distance between Abby and Devon had become impossible to ignore. Short encounters felt awkward, casual conversations lost their natural ease. Those observing began to worry that this fracture was no longer temporary. Meanwhile, Mariah remained a lingering presence in the entire conflict, even without appearing directly in every tense moment. Her existence became a kind of focal point, pulling every emotion into its orbit. Abby felt she was being forced to choose between compassion and principle. Devon, on the other hand, felt burdened with responsibility for consequences he believed could not be ignored. The more they tried to avoid the core issue, the more it surrounded them. Conversations that seemed ordinary would quickly slip into silence or tension. There was no longer a safe space to return to how things once were, but also not enough determination to end things completely. Devon began immersing himself in work as a way to escape the emotions rising within him. He convinced himself that focusing on responsibility was the only way to prevent everything from collapsing further. But the more he avoided it, the more the emptiness became obvious. He realized he had not only lost harmony with Abby, but also the sense of security he once believed their relationship provided. Abby, meanwhile, could not find a similar escape. She was trapped between the desire to fix things and not knowing where to begin. Every time she considered talking again, memories of the argument and accusations resurfaced, making her hesitate yet also preventing her from letting go. The distance between them was no longer measured in physical space, but in unspoken truths. Silence became a new form of pressure, quiet but constant, eroding every remaining layer of connection. Neither of them admitted it aloud, but both could feel they were standing on a fragile edge. In rare moments, both Abby and Devon wondered whether things could ever return to how they were. But the answer was no longer simple. The issue was not a single argument, but the fact that they had seen different sides of each other that they had once chosen to ignore. Genoa City, already no stranger to heartbreak and power struggles, once again witnessed a relationship pushed to its absolute limit. And this time, there was no external enemy, no clear scheme, only two people slowly realizing that love, when stretched by opposing beliefs and principles, can also become a battlefield with no way out.